Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here. What the world needs now is love. More love.
Stars literally aligned.
He's always been the one.
There's someone out there for everyone.
I'm Nancy Regan, your host on the Canadian Love Map. We are on a journey to uncover and share love stories of all kinds.
He's never forgotten to bring me flowers.
We're hoping we're going to give a little good news to this world.
Even in these dark times, the life continues to go on.
It's all about compassion, devotion, adventure, and of course, love.
Everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs love.
This is the Canadian Love Map.
Well, love is the most important thing.
I think, me and BJ still sometimes feel uncomfortable when we go out, holding hands or stuff like that. People take for granted that holding hands for some people is just no one looks. When we hold hands, unfortunately, we have to deal with stares. Something that Milo always says, when he could tell that we are uncomfortable, he will always stand between us and grab both of our hands and start walking. And I always feel like it's him saying, I'm so proud of our family, because he always does it.
Today's love story belongs to Frank and BJ of Toronto. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but in their experience, a photograph of a beautiful milestone moment unleashed an international firestorm. Wait till you hear how an image of the birth of their baby boy ended up at the center of their lawsuit against a right-wing politician in Italy, who ended up being the Italian Prime Minister. Did they win? You bet they did. In every way. This is the Canadian Love Map. BJ and Frank, welcome to the Canadian Love Map.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I've been so looking forward to this conversation, partly because there's some real complexity in it. Everything from the highest level of joy to the most frustrating level of challenge. And we need to go back and start at the beginning for your story to tell it properly. Can I ask how the two of you met?
Yeah. So I was in Toronto one night. It was a Friday night. And I was out, I guess, on a date with somebody else, apparently. I didn't realize that I was, because they wanted to show me around.
This is where it gets complicated.
And then Frank and I both happened to be at the same place, the restaurant, bar, pub thing. And we both had on the same shoes. And we were sitting at the table next to each other. And Frank turned to me and he said, "Oh, I see you have good taste in shoes." And then we started chatting it up. So long story short, I kind of ditched my date and I went out with Frank that night. And then, the rest is history.
Frank, were you on a date that night as well?
I was not on a date that night. I just liked his shoes, and he's very cute, as you can tell. So I wanted to say hi.
And was it as simple as that? Did a relationship just spark from the similar taste in shoes?
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah. We started chatting afterwards, and I went away with my friends to Vegas for like a week, which, by the way, is a very long time to go to Vegas. So if you're thinking about going, a week is way too long. You just need a couple of days. But yeah, we were texting back and forth. And then when I came back, we met up again, and we moved in together in 2008. We met in 2007. And then I moved in, it was July 1st, 2008. Oh.
And there was a lot there because he wasn't out of the closet yet. His parents didn't know he was gay. So there was a lot that happened between us meeting
just meeting. And then I remember we went to Disney in 2008 or just after we met, I think. And you're like, you got to tell your parents because I'm not going to date somebody who was in the closet still. And so Frank helped me have the strength to come out and we needed each other in different ways at the time.
I love the way you said that he helped give you the strength to do it. I know this is a very personal question, but how did it go with your parents is basically what I'm getting at.
So when I came out, I think my family always knew. in some way, because I was always like obsessed with Madonna and Cher and all the stereotypes, and I played with my sister's Barbies and all that, and I wasn't huge into sports as a kid, and so I think deep down they always knew. But then when I did come out, it was just my mom and I, and we were having dinner, and I said to her, I said, there's something I have to tell you. And she's like, yeah. And then I told her that I was gay, and she's like, you're my son and I love you no matter what. I, of course, started bawling and crying because I don't deal well with stress. So I put on the waterworks, hoping like just to like distract her a bit, maybe, I don't know. But it was very emotional. And she's like, you're my son, I love you no matter what. And then she ended up telling everybody else in my family. And then my sisters, they had a hard time with it. My father had a hard time. I mean, he's old school Italian, traditional Italian, where the son has to carry on the name, and we have a business, and you got to like take over the business, and I set your life up for you, and you have to follow that. And then when I kind of went against all that, they didn't understand. And but my mom has always been supportive, and I mean, she struggled with it as well, but no, she came around, and everyone came around, and my grandma too. When I told my grandma, she's like, they're going to come around. She's like, you're still you. But
Well, you know, it strikes me that the story you're telling, so many people can relate to, both in the context of coming out, but also so many people in a broader context of just having their family accept who they really are rather than who they've been trained to be or what the expectations are for who they should be. Yeah. Frank, did you ever go through that kind of transition from your family, or was there a different kind of narrative around your coming out?
My coming out happened a lot earlier than his, like 19, and it wasn't great. My parents were not very accepting at first. It was pretty traumatic at the time, and I ended up like leaving the house and moving out and moving in with friends because things got so volatile in the house. That was maybe 35 years ago now. So things have gotten a lot better. So things do get better. I often tell people it's tough, but right now we're staying at my parents' house. So things have gotten a little bit better. I moved back in, and they're very accepting of BJ. And you know what? And I think what you said about the larger thing, what we've learned and what we've seen from many people is children have a way of bringing people together anyway. So, and I've seen that in many, straight, gay or not, you have a child, and all of a sudden, unless you're just a terrible person, you're happy that you have a grandchild and you want to be part of their life. So parents often have to make their own decisions at that point in life, what they want.
Your words are echoing in my heart because I had that experience with my baby post-divorce. And it is a beautiful way that children have of knitting things back together. And I have to sort of pause and say there was part of me as I was asking you both about your coming out stories that was trying to edit myself, going, why should I be asking them about this? Why can't we just have a conversation? They're gay men who live in this relationship with a child. Why do I need to go to that? But I think the reason is just what you said, both of you. BJ, you said, there's still so much vitriol and ridiculousness. And Frank, you talked about how challenging it was for you, and it was challenging for BJ. And I think unless we continue to give people that sort of example of, yes, it gets better, then there are people out there struggling and maybe listening to this and they'd love to know that extra piece. So I hope that you're on the same page and you don't mind me asking about that part of your history.
Oh, and it's important. No, and it's part of our lives, it's part of our story. I mean, if we never met, we would have never had Milo either. And we wouldn't have the family we have. And
as I say, as teachers, we try, and also we know that we are role models, whether we're actually talking about ourselves or not. So it's important to us for our students, and we've learned over the years, students pay attention to everything. That the story that we make sure that they know that it gets better and share some of our story with them.
Mm-hmm.
How long was it into your relationship where you either one or both of you made the realization, oh, this is serious. This is going to go, for the longer run. This is not just a flirtation.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that we like haven't shared with you. I struggled with drug addiction for many years, and when I met BJ, I had just gotten out of rehab for the third time, and I was seeking. I had a path that I wanted to go on, and my path was very serious. And as a matter of fact, having a child was part of the path, and I was going to do this alone. I didn't expect to meet anyone, and I met him 2 months later. So that was sort of the odd piece. So when I met him, this guy, I just knew he was the right man. He was so kind and caring and just everything. So I think a year after we met, I asked him to marry me, even though he wasn't out to his family yet. Mm-hmm. So this really pushed him. He was living with me, and we had gone to Vegas again.
That's right, yeah.
And I asked him to marry me anyways and he had no idea what I was doing on the gondola. So that's how I knew. I knew right away. But I mean, one of the things was, I'm going to have a child. We're going to have a child. Is that okay with you? So that was that was a sticking point, I guess, a little bit.
See, and after we met, I remember my friends, they were like, oh, dodge this one out of rehab.
Oh yeah, they didn't like
they didn't like you at first because, and I was like, no, he told me as soon as we met that night, he's like, I'm in rehab, or I'm in rehab, whatever, this and that. And I was like, okay, I didn't know. I came from Niagara. I was, I guess, sheltered my whole life, so I really didn't know much about anything. And I was like, okay, that's cool, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. And you were nice, and I liked you, and that was it. And none of that other stuff mattered. And then when you said you wanted to have a kid, I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I never got much about it.
How he handled all of this. He had just come out to he hasn't even come out to his family. Yeah. He met a guy. Yeah. He was much calmer than I was at that. Although it was many years. You were
27. I was 27.
27. He was very calm about the whole thing.
Yeah, because growing up, I never thought I would ever even get married or have a family or anything. So when you're saying this, I was like, because in my head, I was like, okay, it's never going to happen. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Once I finally got my full-time job with the school board, the day I signed my contract, I remember I came and they said, okay, let's start the process. And we're married at that point.
No, let's do a he said, and go back to the engagement for a second, because Frank kind of brushed over that. I want to know, what is the gondola?
Sure. So we went to Vegas just for the weekend, though. It wasn't a week-long trip this time around. So we were there for the weekend. And then I remember the day you were all nervous and stuff, and I didn't know what was going on. And you're like, don't follow me. I just have to go out and do something, but don't follow me.
I'm very, very slick when I'm doing something. I'm not a very good liar.
I'm like, what is he up to now? I'm like, what is going on? What's going on? But I had no clue what was happening. So then we went to the gondola in the Venetian hotel, and then so it's like Italy, right? It's they have the guys in the boats going through the canal and everything in the hotel. And so we had our time slot booked. We go on the thing, and then all of a sudden you get down and propose. And I remember when you asked me to marry you, and I was like, are you serious? I was like, really? And then you're like, yeah. And then, but even at that point, I wasn't even out yet.
Yeah.
I wasn't even out, because I remember after that, I was like, shit, how am I going to tell my family that A, I'm gay, B, I'm getting engaged.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking then, but I just knew.
I knew, but this was the push. But that's how I said before, that he helped me, because I knew if I never met him, I probably still would have never came out, or would have been in a different way, or things might have ended badly, right, for myself.
Mm.
So
Frank, it seems to me when I hear BJ describe that, I get a sense of how accepting and non-judgmental he was. And it must have been a complicated time with all that had to transpire between then and the wedding. But can you tell us just a little bit about the wedding?
Yeah, it was, we got married August long weekend, so our anniversary is coming up soon.
We will preface this that his family was not at the wedding.
My parents came. Just my parents came, because we did invite everybody. But of course, then after I came out, like there was that period of time where my family had a hard time and not accepting, and my sister's not accepting.
Well, he came out and said, I'm getting married.
Also, so it was like blow after blow after blow to them, which in retrospect, now I understand why they probably didn't come, but I can't hold that against them. But my parents did come, because I remember talking to my mom afterwards, and she says that they sat downstairs, because we got married on the rooftop of our condo overlooking Toronto and stuff. It was beautiful. But she said that they sat downstairs for a good half hour just waiting and not sure.
Well, they made the right decision. by coming.
Yeah.
I think they probably don't regret that they
No, and my mom even said, she's like, we're not gonna not be there for your wedding, like you're a kid still. So
his mom was wise beyond her years in some ways. I don't know if my parents would have come at that point, but who knows?
Let's talk about Milo and how this plan all came together.
So I will say, I can talk a little bit more. I don't think he remembers, but I think very early on, before we got married, I said, I'm going to have a baby, like pretty close to him. And he was like, okay. He didn't say no or yes. He was like, this is a lot, right? Yeah. He's like a go with the flow kind of guy. He's very easygoing, as you can tell. I don't know how I would have handled. I probably would have ran for me. But anyway, he did not run. And we took him to our local LGBTQ plus community center, and they had a Daddies and Papas course to learn how to be how you might go about becoming a parent through adoption, through fostering,
co-parenting,
surrogacy, all that. Every week was a different parenting style. And I remember on the very first week, I'll never forget it, they asked everyone in the room, most of the people were there with a partner, but not everyone. Some were single dads. And they asked everyone, like, go to one side of the room if you know for sure you want to have a parent, and they go to the other side of the room if you're not so sure. He went to the not so sure side. I was on the sure side. And I think all the couples were kind of split up. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. I still remember that as just an interesting note of, what was going through people's minds. And that was about 5-6 years before we had our son. Yeah. Anyways, we took that course. We got married. I think BJ told you, he had moved here without a job and all of that. And I had a timeline. I think I was 40 when we got married. I was. Yep. And I said, but by 45, this is happening. A couple years later, and then we started the process. He came to me within a minute of him saying, let's do this. Yeah. I had found us an agency to work with and a doctor. I had appointments. It was within days of him saying that. Yeah. We ended up using surrogacy. I now am a board member for a non-for-profit called Men Having Babies, and I travel the world with them, talking to other dads about having babies. So wow. I laugh now, but I always tell people that I had the idea that we would have more control if we started, if we did surrogacy. But we soon found out that there's no control over really baby making. There's a lot of statistics and a lot of other things, but the control wasn't there. But we're happy we went with surrogacy at the time.
And was it a fairly seamless process, or was there a very bumpy road to getting there?
I would say that it was mostly, now that I work with Men Having Babies and I see other people's journeys, I would say ours was pretty seamless. We made mistakes. We should have listened to our brains and not our hearts at certain times, but mostly seamless. We started the process, he said, in January of 2013, and Milo was born in June of 2014. So that's a pretty seamless and quick process. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like, Frank, you were prepared long before this.
I was so prepared. I don't even know how I worked that year, because most of my time was, I shouldn't have said, was talking to people, sending emails. There's just so much in order to find a surrogate that there's so much extra. It's not just filling out a form, right? It's talking to people and getting to know people. And then we met our surrogate just through, everything seemed to be luck. We just met her online, and it all worked out with her. And so we were just very lucky.
We couldn't share the great stories that we do here on the Canadian Love Map podcast without the amazing support of Charm Diamond Centers. They are Canada's largest family-owned jeweler, and they're proud to be putting love on the map. The folks at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. So I want to talk about the moment of birth, because that moment got captured in a photo that ended up being a huge part of your story, like it or not. And if you could describe for me what that experience of the birth was like, that would be amazing.
There was two sides to this story that I'd like to tell. We don't even tell our surrogate side, because she had done all of this. She loved being pregnant. She loved, so she became a surrogate all, for all the right reasons. And she offered, a friend of hers was a photographer, and she said, she'd never done a live birth, especially not of a LGBTQ family. She wanted to offer her services for free to sit in the room and take pictures. So that's how pictures got in the room. The reason I say there's two sides is that she didn't tell anyone she was pregnant. She was in a very small town. She didn't tell people she was caring for a gay couple. And she really didn't tell anyone about what she was doing. So there's that side of what happens when that photo comes out on her side and for what it means to us. Wow. So in the room, once we were, pregnant, she had said that she wanted only a non-hospital birth, but we convinced her, but with a midwife and a doula. So we're in a room, very quiet in a hospital with no doctors, no thing, just the photographer, the midwife. And we just sat there, and it was a lovely day. And Kathy is a very strong woman. She had full natural childbirth with us there. And
your parents came up and
my parents were in the waiting room. And Milo was born at like 4:00 on that day.
4:15.
We had already been he was born in Kingston. We had already been there for 10 days, I think.
Yeah, he was 10 days
waiting.
Overdue.
She was 10 days overdue. We went up on her due date, and she finally at 10 days agreed for a slight inducement, and a very natural one, not a chemical one. And she gave birth that day, and it was lovely. And then, as you've seen the photo that was taken, like, I don't remember, we had made decisions beforehand. First of all, I remember we were in our first appointment with the doula, midwife, excuse me. We were in, and she said, okay, so you're, when the baby comes, we'll do chest to chest. And I was like, so are we, I remember sitting there in that thing going, are we all naked? Like, I didn't know if that's something that midwives did. Like, we're really free and we're all naked.
And spiritual and
she's like, no. We want to do skin to skins. It's good for you, him to touch your body and to get your hearts connected together. She goes, so when the baby's born, you'll take your shirts off and we'll do that. I'm like, perfect. So we had all that planned. You were going
to hold him.
Yep.
And then I was going to cut the umbilical cord. So we had all that already pre-planned.
And so the baby came, still attached. I leaned in and grabbed the baby, and he was there right next to me. And then she took a beautiful shot at that moment. Our favorite shot is the one that, if you've seen it, includes me and BJ are in the middle holding Milo, and the outskirts of the photo is our surrogate Kathy, her husband Chris, and the midwife. So it's sort of like this beautiful picture showing the team, all the people that are really important in order to have a baby.
It's an extraordinary picture. And when I saw it, I immediately thought that's something that belongs in Life magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just captures a moment in time so powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you feel like you're there almost. So at first, did you treasure that photo?
Well, I remember when Lindsay, the photographer, showed us, she sent it to us, and she's like, do you mind if I put this on my Facebook page? And this was like the next day after Milo was born. And we looked at it, we're like, oh, it's beautiful. Sure, whatever. It looks, yeah, that's fine. Because we were busy feeding Milo, taking care of him. We had a newborn. We were focused on him. We didn't even think about the photo or anything like that. And we're like, yeah, okay, sure, do what you want. We're like, okay. We never thought anything about it.
And in a way, don't you think it was also like, I'm sure that you might have wanted to say yes, because it's a beautiful piece of advocacy as well. It's a good example.
We thought it was beautiful, putting it up on her Facebook. We didn't think anything of it. And it was only from a friend, I think 3 days later. She's like, she called it, she goes, you're going viral. And I was like, what's viral?
Yeah.
I was like, what does she mean by this? Right? Like, I don't know what she means. I thought she meant there was a few hundred likes on our photo. And she was like, there's 50,000 likes on your photo on Facebook, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And then within the next day, then the news, all the news stations started calling us. So it became I think it was a bit of a blur, a bit of interest. We were very proud at that point that somehow our photo was making a difference. I always make a joke, to this day, I always felt somehow I'd be famous. Maybe we all feel that, but When it became about this photo, I couldn't have been prouder that whatever it was, our 15 minutes, that this is how we're going to be famous, by being the face of like acceptance and gay dads. I couldn't have been prouder. So I still couldn't be prouder.
And Milo was also born during World Pride. We were hosting, Toronto was hosting World Pride. So it just even heightened the
excitement,
excitement, because the entire world is here in Toronto, and he's born. He was dubbed the Pride Baby, and it was pretty cool, to be honest. It was surreal also, because all the news stations were calling us. We were doing interviews and going to news stations, and we had like German TV fly in to interview us and all this, and it was just, we're just a little family, and like we're just like everybody else. It was.
We were just trying to survive also with a newborn at home.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
But you say he was called the Pride Baby, and that just strikes such a chord in me, because he and the picture were something that you should have, rightly been so proud of and so excited about. And then the story took a twist. I guess, it's true that anytime you go viral, you get to a certain level of popularity, and there's an element of society that then goes, and changes the narrative.
Yep.
What happened?
So this was, when the photo had gone viral the first time in 2014, when he was born. Of course, we had like thousands and thousands of messages of love and support, and how it's opened people's hearts and minds. And but then of course you always get all the trolls and all those negative people and spewing hate and all that. And of course I started reading all this, and I start like getting angry, because how can somebody say such horrible things about Milo, about our little baby, like, because it's disgusting. But then
and Kathy and her family were really struggling. Kathy really struggled through this. Yeah. Because all of a sudden everyone knew in her small town she was helping a gay couple. She lost friends and family because of it to this day.
Yeah. So we fast forward now to 2016. And I get some messages from somebody on Twitter saying that there's this politician in Ireland who was using our photo for like anti-surrogacy, her campaign against surrogate. There was a thing happening in Ireland, but she had used our photo for her case to that gay men should not have kids through surrogacy, something like that. Anyway, so then that started to get a little trending and all that, and then she ended up taking it down. And during that time, my cousin in Italy calls me, and she's like, "BJ, you're on the news here in Italy." And I'm like, "What are we doing in Italy now?" I'm like, "What did I do?" And so then she showed us the photo from, there's the right-wing political party there called the Fratelli d'Italia. And they used our photo with Frank, like they cut out everybody else. It was just me, Frank, and Milo. And it says in Italian, "This child will never know its mother. Who is going to defend the rights of this child?" And they were having a referendum in there about...
it was about adoption.
It was about same-sex couples legally adopting children, and that it's between like marriage, and families only have to be traditional between a man and a woman. And that, so they used our photo again for anti-surrogacy, anti-adoption, for their propaganda.
Can you even describe your emotional reaction or response to this?
So when I first saw it, to be honest, I laughed. I'm like, this is so stupid. The first thing that came to my mind was, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. Because here they are using our photo for something against us, against our family. Like, it didn't make any sense at all when I
we also probably couldn't have understood the scope from what we've been told in Italy, that it was being used quite in commercials. We saw some of the posters that were put up around, so we don't know how much. We had, at that point, our photo had been used many times. We were sent, frequently people would send us our photo being used, usually in lovely ways. Even, the photo was even used in a Dove baby commercial. So the photo had been used in very nice ways.
TED Talks,
educational.
Usually, because even our friends who are like for principals and stuff, and in their training, our photo was in their training for principal, like the principal course here. And she sends me a message. She's like, "I know who this is." And she sends me a screenshot of like, she took a picture of like their little slideshow, and we're in there. I'm like, "Oh, this is cool. Like, our photo is now being used for good things and education and stuff like that." So it's really neat to be a part of that. But then when you get the whole negative side of it being used against you for hate.
We also I think our biggest confusion, and it is still to this day, is how you look at that photo, whether or not the surrogate is taken out. I still can't see how you look at that and go, ew, gross. But I guess that's what some people see. We see pure love. So the idea that it was someone used that photo to tell the world, like, to convince the world that we shouldn't have a baby, or gay people shouldn't have a baby, kind of floored us.
You know, there's a song by a woman named Shayna Knoll, which is a piece of music that is sort of known for going right into people's heart and soul. It's not just on an intellectual level, you hear it. And it's called, "How Could Anyone Ever Tell You You Were Anything Less Than Beautiful?" And I just keep thinking about that song as you talk about this story, about your relationship, about Milo, about the photo. Like, how could anyone tell you you were anything less than beautiful? This triggered a bit of a different journey for you into the legal system.
Yeah.
Can you even talk about that?
I mean, we started this in 2016. A few lawyers came forward for us in Italy. We weren't looking to sue anyone. I mean, we thought about it. A few people said you should sue, but we were like, what do we do?
We're in Toronto.
We don't have the funds. Like, what are you going to win? We didn't know. But then a couple Italian firms came forward. Both of them were very tied to the LGBTQ community and were tied to doing, I guess, community advocacy work as well. The woman that we were suing and the party were like a far-right fascist party. We thought this was like a nothing party, like just... Anyway, 7 years. So we signed away our power of attorney. We went to the Italian consulate. We signed a bunch of papers and we gave it to them. And then we waited. We waited for...
Well, first
3 years, and then COVID started.
But also during that time, this right-wing party, the leader, became the prime minister of Italy. So now she's leading the country. And here we are, little family in Toronto, suing the prime minister of Italy, which was also insane.
No, that's how long this took. Also, 7 years. We are just happy. We were just happy when we found out last June in Pride Month again that we had won the case. As far as what's happened along the way, unfortunately, the photographer also sued for copyright, and they did not agree with her case, but they did agree that our images were used without our consent.
Wow, what a journey! I can't even imagine. And you're just meanwhile trying to raise a child and be a regular happy family.
Yep. Yeah.
We had pretty much given up on the case after, it was like 7 years. I think our last few emails were like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And we were hearing very little from the lawyers at that point. So we had no idea. They kept saying, wait. We didn't know what we were waiting for. And then all of a sudden they messaged us and said, you won. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it was just after I think like a couple days before your birthday or after your birthday. It was at the beginning of June.
Yeah. The turn that it took at the end to win the case against the prime minister was very exciting for us. I know we don't live in Italy, so it's hard because we can only understand it as what it would be like to fight against a fascist government here, which we would do the same if we had the chance. Mm-hmm. So we hope that we gave a little bit of hope to our friends and family in Italy, because they're going through a lot of crap right now with excuse my language, but with the current government and the rights that they're stripping for LGBTQ families there.
Yeah, it's happening around the world, and it's so unbelievable to see us sliding backwards like this. Yep. Let's talk about something beautiful and positive.
Okay.
Tell me about Milo.
Oh, he's such a great kid. He just turned 10 already, which is insane. I can't believe this whole decade just flew by in the blink of an eye.
It goes fast.
It goes very fast, but he is a very smart, inquisitive, curious, sarcastic, loving, empathetic, stubborn, jovial, happy little boy. He is honestly the best thing that's ever happened to us.
Yes. It's funny because he's like the best dad. He didn't want to become a dad, and he's like the best. Anyway, he's the best dad.
Oh, thanks.
But you know what, Milo, what we're so proud of is what I think what we've been trying to teach Milo from the get-go is to be kind to everyone, to accept acceptance and love for all, And I think that he is going to grow up into a real leader, I'm hoping. He loves Pride. He thinks Pride is all about him. So I think that there's still some confusion about what his role is. Every year we go in the parade and we march in the parade as teachers, we march. He just loves it. And he just, every time he sees a flag or a Pride flag, he's always like pointing out that it's our colors. So I don't know. And he's very proud of his family. I always tell a story that, and it touches me so much, that when we're out, I think, me and BJ still sometimes feel uncomfortable when we go out, holding hands or stuff like that. And we won't always do it. I don't think people take for granted that holding hands for some people is just no one looks. When we hold hands, unfortunately, we have to deal with stares, and whether or not what we've learned over the years is some of the stares and whispers are very positive, but people don't realize that when you're used to being whispered, like I remember our first flight with Milo, and this woman kept staring and whispering to someone about and pointing at us. And I was like, this is so rude. But by the end of the flight, she said, what a beautiful family you have. She was like, couldn't keep my eyes off of you. So I try and remember every time someone's pointing that that's it. But Milo, I was going to say something that Milo always says. When he can tell that we are uncomfortable, no matter where we are in the world, he will always stand between us and grab both of our hands and start walking. And I always feel like it's him saying, I'm so proud of our family, because he always does it. Yep. He's constantly grabbing our hands when I'm always like, oh, okay, let's hold hands here. Yep. He feels no shame, and I don't know if he should feel shame or anything, or if he's doing it to show people his pride. I don't know. It's just something that always gets to me.
Well, when you say that, I see him bridging the two of you, being a bridge between you, or better yet, a rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you love most about each other?
Frank is so strong in so many ways, just always like being there for me and helping me through things. That you help me more than you actually realize me, and just like being myself. And as I get older, and as the more we're together, it's like now I don't really give a shit about what people say or think of. Sorry, my language, but it's like you help me find the strength that I need, and you're always there. And
I'm very loud, and over the years, yes. I've learned to not take crap from other people, and it probably is alarming sometimes. But if people are staring at us or calling us a name, I'm the first one to get up and call them a name back, or make a statement about it, or use that moment. I mean, for him, he's just like I said earlier. I mean, since the day I met him, he's just accepted. I always say to BJ, he doesn't think that hard about things, and I think too much. And I think that it's a perfect match, that, when I'm thinking too much, he just is like, whatever. I'm like, all right, let's just do with whatever. I'm like, it doesn't bother you? He's like, no, it really doesn't bother me. So it really helps. I think we're each our yin and yang, and right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we just need to be.
Right. Stop thinking, stop doing, and just be. Focus on being. Well, I'm so glad that you could be with me today. I just love you guys. I'm so happy to be able to tell this story of your relationship and your family. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter. We love sharing love stories of all kinds, and that could include yours. So do you or someone you know have an uplifting tale to tell? Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram using @CanadianLoveMap, or email producer@podstarter.io. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map.